Okay, so I just finished replacing the U-joints in my 2006 Nissan Titan, and unfortunately I've already put all my stuff away, but hopefully you can get kind of the gist of what I did here and be able to do it yourself. So the first thing I did was put the truck up on ramps, put the rear wheels up on ramps, and then I also used my 6-ton jack stands under there just as some redundancy. Even though I have a 1-inch block on the back here lifting some of the truck out of the way a little bit, just was easier to have a little more room. Keep in mind, if you take your drive shaft off here on an automatic transmission, your truck's going to want to roll away. So chalk those wheels and be safe. There's no point in saving money if you're under the truck when it's going to hurt you or kill you. So first thing you'll do is on the back of the drive shaft there's a yoke that hooks onto the differential. There's 4 17mm bolts you'll want to undo, and mine were a little stuck. I had to use some heat and some PV blaster to get them off, but they came loose eventually. And as you're doing that, make sure you don't bang into your drive shaft or dent it or cause any problems that way. The drive shaft's real sensitive to balance, and so last thing you want to do is dent it and throw that balance off. Make sure you mark your differential, your yoke, and your drive shaft in the position they are in now. So when you take them off and put them back on, you put them back on the same way they were already there. So at the front here, you'll see at the front of your drive shaft, the yoke just slides into your transfer case. There's nothing physically holding it on there. So take those 4 bolts off the rear and just carefully slide the yoke out, and like I say, don't drop it or dent it or do anything that way. At that point, what I did was I set my drive shaft on the ground on a couple pieces of wood with some towels on them to kind of protect it. And there's 2 techniques you can use to take your U-joint out. One of them is use a bigger socket that can sort of catch the U-joint, and then use a smaller socket on the top to hammer down and push it out. Or if you have a ball joint press kit, they're like $40 on Amazon. That's useful too. It's like a clamp with a rod, and when you spin that rod with your air gun, it'll push downward and push pressure and slide it out the other side. So either technique works. I can't really show you well how to do that because I've already put it back together, but if you search on YouTube for U-joint replacement, you'll see what I'm talking about. So basically, on each side you either hammer or push the one side down, and when it comes all the way down, you can pull the cap off and then flip it over, and you push on the other side, and the capless side will slide down, and you'll be able to pull this cap off. And once both caps are off, then you can take the U-joint out of either the yoke or the drive shaft. So you see there's these little C-clips that are in there. So before you're able to do any of that, take a little pair of needle nose pliers and pull those C-clips out. Get yourself organized on your block. When you're pounding on this with a hammer, you don't want to hit your drive shaft, you want it bouncing off the ground. So you want your big catch socket to be on the sleeve of the drive shaft, so that the U-joint can just slide down into it, and all the pressure you're exerting when you're hammering is hitting that socket and not the drive shaft on the ground. So that's a little hard to explain in the air, but I hope you can find a video that kind of shows you that particular technique. You'll see inside these, if I can get one of these caps off, they have what's called needle bearings in them. When you take the old one off, don't worry if some of those are loose or looking rusty or whatever. That's why you're replacing it. But when you put the new one on, that's when you want to be very careful. So you'll take the cap off 2 sides of it on your new one, and you'll slide it into the sleeve of the drive shaft or the yoke, and then you'll carefully put one cap on and press it into place, and then you'll be able to flip it over and carefully put the other cap on and press it into place, and being very careful you don't tip these needle bearings over. In my case, I did tip them over and broke them, and I had to order a new U-joint middle of the project. So just be really careful. You don't want any dirt or grime to get inside. Those are bearings that are spinning. If you put a bunch of crap in there, they're just going to fail sooner on you. This is the one that came off the truck. It has 118,000 miles on it. It looks like it lived a good life and was ready to be replaced. Nissan does put a spicer on there regularly, but the spicer I got, I'll put the model number in the comments. It has a greasable zerk, so every once in a while I can throw some grease on there and keep those guys spinning real nicely. Once you have it put back together, it took me quite some time. It took me a couple hours, a lot longer than I thought it would, to get this all put back together. Once you have the U-joint in place, make sure that on the ground that it spins rather freely. There's no binding as you turn it, or anything preventing it from spinning freely within these caps. And at that point, you're gonna put your C-clips back in. Spicer gives you some C-clips. I found that the ones they gave me were a little thick, and so if you take just a flat file and file them down a little bit, you can get them to fit. There's a little groove in there. You want to clean that groove out nice and clean and put the ring in, and you'll feel it snap into place. And, that is what's going to hold your U-joint in there. So that's a little important. So if you're able to get that far, you got your new one in, you got it all put back together, you're just going to reverse your steps. So you come under the truck here real careful. I laid on a creeper and had the drive shaft laying on top of me, and that seemed to work out quite well. I was able to slide the yoke into the transfer case and come back here and align my rear yoke with the marks that I made earlier, and make sure that it was all lined up nice, and then tighten those bolts down real tight. Just give your clips one last check to make sure they're in there, and at that point you're done. It took me about 5 or 6 hours to do this rear shaft. I'm sure people can do it a lot faster, but just kind of learning as I go. If you have questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to help. Thanks.